Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Paige, this is Seeking Alexandria, and today is a video that is dedicated to you guys. You have wanted this video for so long, and I am finally here, finally sitting down to make it. So we are going through my top 10 favorite foundations from when I had oily skin. Now for those of you that don't know, I will be referencing to when I had oily skin a lot in this video, and that is because as of recent, like in the last couple of weeks, for some reason my skin has had like a drastic change of heart, and now I am somewhere on like the normal to dry range. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to learn how to live life this way. I have never in my life had anything but oily skin. In the last 4 years that I have been like wearing makeup, loving makeup, getting into makeup, I have always had very oily skin, like drastically oil. Like if you think you have oil, girl, like we're talking I could fry things on my face. It has been a minute and I've never experienced this scale before. So I did do a full video kind of talking about this. It was a get ready with me where I'm like panicking, like, you guys, I don't know what the problem is. None of my favorites will work. La 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 la. And I did a full video, so it's a get ready with me style, but I will link that right up here for you guys because that is like, that's a couple weeks before that is when all of this started to change. And I have a lot of foundations from very different like areas. I have different price points. I have different forms of foundation because I really wanted this video to be something that I'm hoping everyone can kind of glean a little something from. Even if you don't have oily skin, I'm hoping that there's something you can take because I know that there's a lot of people that watch my videos that they don't have oily skin or they have dry skin, or, you know, everybody has different skin types and everyone has different preferences. So I'm really going to dive in. There's going to be a ton of talking in this. I apologize. Very casual, chill kind of video, as you can tell. Like I'm just chilling out in my sweater. And actually, before I get started, if you're wondering what is on my lids and like on my face overall, I will go ahead and link the video. I just reviewed the Violet Voss little mini palettes. You will have seen it a couple of days ago, but if you're new here, I will go ahead and link that because you will not have seen it. So anyways, let's go ahead and dive into the foundations. The first one I'm going to talk about is my MAC Studio Fix powder. This was my ride or die for like probably before my skin changed, I would say 3 months. I wore this powder solid. Every video, everything I shot, I didn't touch a liquid foundation for such a long time. And I don't know, maybe that's why my skin finally turned dry. It was like, okay, enough, we get it. But I'm telling you, this is so good. I actually have a full video on how I do this. I will link it right here. And it was basically like a how I use powder foundation. It melted into my skin. And I know that if you have oily skin, one of the biggest issues we have is sopping up that oil and like, you know, finding foundations that'll work with it and not repel it. And what I found with this MAC Studio Fix is that it had such beautiful, fast, quick coverage. And I'd use it in tandem with this IT Cosmetics Heavenly Luxe Airbrush Powder Brush. This little nugget right here was so heavenly with this. And I'm just going to tell you right now, I looked like a raging lunatic when I was putting this on. I'm going to be completely honest because this is how I would do it. I would grab it, open it up, and look at the dent that's in that. Oh my God. And I would take this and I would just jam it in there, get full of powder, and I would just and I would just literally fill my face with this powder. And at first you'd look at it and be like, oh my God, what is wrong with this girl? But I'm telling you, as I went through and I continued to put the rest of my face on, everything blended so nicely. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind if this is the route you're wanting to go, if you're wanting to play around with it, so on and so forth. There were a couple things you had to remember. Number one, you have to prime, obviously, before foundation, but you also have to conceal with a liquid concealer before you can use this. So for myself, my favorite like go-to set that I would use, this is the Becca Skin Love Glow Essence Glow Nectar. I would take this, and again, I go all through all of this in that video, but I would take this, put it on my skin, and this would really help give me a little bit of a glow and a tacky base because this is a powder. It needs something to stick to, and I didn't want it to just stick to the concealer because then you end up with like that weird, like, you know, it only sticks to weird areas. You're going to be patchy. It's not going to be flattering. So going down with a layer of this first really gave everything like a nice tacky base to sit down. So this first, and then my concealer, whether it was Shape Tape or the Too Faced contour one, that new, the Born This Way concealer. Love that. That's a great concealer as well for this type of thing. And then blend all of that down, press it into the skin. And when you go in with this and you're really pressing this into the skin as well, it somehow manages to just like press all of the layers together, and this settles so beautifully into the skin. I have a ton of texture. If you're new here, holy hell do I have texture. And this would just like sink right in. It wouldn't emphasize texture. It was never crazy. It was never over the top. And as I went through, I'd finish up all my products, and when I went in and started spraying my face with my like Urban Decay or my Morphe or whatever I was using, this powder has a way of like turning into a liquid foundation and just melting into your skin. I don't know how it is. It's like, it is honestly magical. I have never had another foundation out of all of these. This one was by far the best. It wore the best. As far as controlling oil, I'm not going to say it controlled it because it definitely didn't, but it did help. The oil that come through had somewhere to go. And because, you know, like when you have oily skin, you want there to be something to absorb that oil on your face. And that's why we powder. That's why we do all these extra steps. That's why we have setting powder and blah, 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 because we need it to absorb that oil. And what was so awesome about this combination is that somehow this still did, even though it was already set down and I had already sprayed with a setting spray and all of that, this had a way of still continuing to soak up the oils that were coming out of my skin in such a way that like it soaked it up and then made it flawless. Like what is that Tyra Banks always said? She's like, they were like, do the pose and then make it fashion. Like it was like that, but with this foundation, it would go on, set down and soak it up and then make it melted, like, and make it just look, that was so dramatic, and just make it look so beautiful overall. Like this right here is so great. Again, only if you do have oily skin, and this has to be the type of oil that you even get like on the perimeters, not just T-zone oil, because this is going to be, again, all over your face. You're going to need that absorbing oil everywhere in order to not look like super matte and super cakey. So this is reserved for the super oily. You can put it over other foundations. It works great if you need extra coverage as well over top of these other ones. Anything you need to do with it though, if you have very oily skin, this is like holy grail, so good. I was in the shade NC10 and it is so gorgeous. I love it. I swore by it, so good. So next up, we are diving into the cult classic of the bunch. This is the Hourglass Vanishing Stick. Everybody talks about it, everybody raves about it, everybody loves it. And here's my thing with this. It is in my top 10 because I loved it, but I didn't love it for the same reasons everyone else does. Everyone else talks about, oh, the coverage is so great and this is wonderful. For me, it wasn't that. For me, this was a beautiful mixing foundation that I didn't have to mix. It wasn't another medium that I needed to add onto the skin that created like a goopy feel when it mixed with my oil. And meaning there's a lot of foundations in this world that they say they're full coverage, they say they're all these things, and when you have oily skin, a lot of us also have acne prone skin. And so we need coverage, we need more intensity, we need that coverage, because without it, everything is just shows through and it looks weird or it looks patchy or it looks like we didn't even put anything on, and it's, you know, you don't feel good about yourself. And for me, this stick foundation was in between of all of those worlds. It had okay coverage, but not full. It had a beautiful way of like melting into the skin and not emphasizing my texture, but at the same time, it carried beautifully with a liquid foundation, something that had full coverage. And so my favorite would actually be to mix this and my other favorite, or one of my other favorites, which is the Catrice HD coverage right here. This is a super affordable. It's like $5.99. It only comes in like 6 colors, which is crap. But by mixing these two colors, this is Alabaster, by the way. I think it's the lightest shade they make. And when I would mix these two together, I didn't need a lot of product because this Catrice is like straight up full coverage, so good. I use this, like, this is a full freaking bottle of dropper fluid, like a dropper style product. And you don't need hardly any of it to be full coverage. The problem I always had is that I needed something that could make it go farther, make it stretch across the face, because the coverage was great, but I needed something to tone down the color and help that lightweight feel go all over the face. And by mixing these two together, you had the seamless look of this with the coverage of this one, and the two together were just an unbeatable, unstoppable combination. Now, I did find that I could use the stick foundation with other foundations as well, and that's something I should probably point out. Probably should have said it before I got started. I, as an oily skinned person, could never, almost never, wear just one foundation. Aside from my MAC Studio Fix powder, this is the only one I was ever able to wear alone. I always had to mix two because I had acne, I had oily skin, and a lot of texture. And when you have all three, those are the big hitters that, you know, people can't stand on their skin. Everything emphasizes those three things. So if you have a foundation that's only good at two, one of them is still going to show and you're not going to feel good about yourself. So I would never, like, as myself in good conscience, I would never sit here and tell you guys like, oh, any one of these will get you. No, because that wasn't the case for me, and I'm not going to ever advise you guys to stop at one. If you feel like you need to experiment and you need to have other options, or, you know, I really like the quality of these two items, whether you have oily skin, dry skin, normal, I don't care. Don't ever feel like you can't experiment. Try it. Go there. Honestly, it's never going to hurt you. The worst you're going to have is one bad makeup day for trying a combination. And I took that chance on this MAC Studio Fix one day, and I'm telling you, it changed my whole world. And I wore it for like 3 months. It got me through a lot of rough minutes. It was the quickest I've ever been able to put on my makeup. And I say this because as an oily skinned person, you feel like you always have to wear this super thick layer. It's going to be cakey, it's going to be gummy, and it has all of these negative connotations. And I'm telling you that that is not the case. It is actually so beautiful to take other forms and other formulas and other brands and really just meld them together and learn. For myself especially, I had to learn how to take, you know, I didn't have like a ton of money to spend on all of this one really expensive foundation, so how can I make it last? For example, this Hourglass, this is like $44, $45. It's expensive, and I could have done just my whole face in this over and over and over again, but it wouldn't have lasted me as long. So being able to mix something high-end that has beautiful areas and beautiful attributes, and to be able to mix that with something that was so much more affordable was my key. It was my goal, and it was the way that I was able to build myself up and make myself feel good about myself. Make myself feel good about myself. Okay, and anyways, I say all of that because personally, this is a great mix-in foundation. The stick foundation worked so beautifully for me in the respect of settling into the pores and looking beautiful, helping my face. I was wearing this combo one time, and I got told, you don't even look like you have pores. And I'm sorry, do we not all want to have the skin of Alyssa Ashley's and Nikki Tutorials? Like, is that not the skin we go for? Because they just don't have pores, and like, that's the game I'm in. And I looked so flawless, and it was in full sun, by the way, like the most unflattering light, full sun, beaming down on my face. And she's like, your skin looks flawless. And I was like, thank you. That was this combination. So good. So again, a great mix-in, You put them together and you really do have the best of both worlds. So the Hourglass one, like I said, more of a mix for me. I did really prefer a lot of these with a beauty blender. This, I had to use a beauty blender with to press it into the skin. It was a must. There was no option for a brush on this one. Now with the Catrice, this is a great add-in if you need coverage. So I'll be telling you that as we go as well. This one is a great add-in if I needed smoothness and a lighter color. This was a great add-in for coverage, and it is so good because I needed such a tiny amount of it. Like, we're talking, I could do like, and I was full of acne. I still have quite a bit of acne and like acne scarring and stuff, but I could put a tiny drop, like 2 drops on each cheek, like the little dropper, you know, poop, 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 and then like 2 on the forehead, and I could have this beautiful mattified covered face of my dreams. So this is an ideal mix-in, and I would love to mix it in with everything, honestly. And if you're looking for another one of these, or you don't like this, or for whatever reason, another option that I really love that's also at the drugstore is the e.l.f. Acne Fighting Foundation. This foundation has the coverage for days. It is so cheap. Yet again, only available in like 3 colors, all of which are light beige, medium beige, and dark beige. But it's one of those ones where you're gonna need a mix-in. You're gonna need, you know, something to go with it if you need lighter or darker versions, because the skin tone inclusivity is non-existent with these two. But the formulas are so good. Like, both are so full coverage. This one I could wear more alone by itself and not have an issue, whereas this one I did have to mix in with other options because there wasn't, if I would have built it up, it started to get funny, but when I mixed it in with other things, it was just like, it was just like a mask, and it was perfect, and it was flawless, and it was lovely. And this foundation really takes on the attributes of other foundations. So if you had one that was like dewy or more luminous or more lit from within type style, this would go in and give you coverage and then also allow a little bit of the light to come through. It would, if you put it with something that was really smooth and again, texture minimizing, it would still let you have all of those properties, but just really amplify the coverage. But this e.l.f. one didn't so much do that. It mixed, and I always had to mix it with like a lightener or a lighter foundation because it was so dark on me. It is so dark on me, but it was so freaking fantastic because it was an all-in-one super affordable drugstore foundation that I knew I could even take. Like, when I was on the go back when I first started using this, I would take this and I would grab my really light Shape Tape. I think back then it was Fair, because that was the only shade they had, was the shade Fair, and that was on the lighter spectrum. That was the lightest option, and I would take those 2 items and I would basically be shape taping my face, adding this in for coverage because I had to lighten it so it would be my actual skin tone. And I found that this just worked so beautifully with so many mediums. It worked beautifully with so many options and lighteners and this and that. Like, this is just such an easy to transform option, whereas this one you have to transform it. If this one matches your skin tone, I didn't have to transform it, but it is so beautiful and all encompassing, and it just covers so many imperfections. Like, I love it. These are both very similar. Again, this one I could wear by itself and just shape tape the shit out of myself until I was the right color, but this one I did have to mix. So if you don't like to mix, you don't have to. This is a great option, but again, good luck finding your skin tone because there's only like 3 or 4. So this one is also on the drugstore side, and I really fell in love with this. It was when it first was released, God, I want to say last summer. This is the Physicians Formula Healthy Foundation. I actually have bought probably 2 bottles of this. This was such a beautiful foundation on my oily skin. I always had to mix this. Yet again, my favorite to mix it with was one of the Dior foundations, which is coming up next. But this was so beautiful. It does have a brightening complex to it. That's what they call it. That's not me making it up. And what this did, and the reason I had to mix it, this is a beautiful, like, healthy, luminous look, but I was able to keep the luminosity when I mixed it with a matte foundation. And it's very rare with oily skin that you're able to do that, because when you have to mix everything to mattify everything, a lot of times you lose that glowy lit from within feeling. And you guys, if you're watching this and you're listening to me right now, you're going, yep, she's right, because it's you lose that lighted effect on your face. You lose it because you have to, because all these other products are so mattified, and then you have to powder, and then and you are never left with just a beautiful glowy face moment. And this one, every time I mixed it, I was left with a beauty glowing, like, oh, just a shining moment. Not glitter, not sparkle, not a weird highlight. No, it was just the foundation, and it really shined through. So for me, this was such a key staple in my products for so long. Again, I did end up buying 2 of them because it was so great. This is in the shade LC1, and I'm gonna tell you, if you're fair like me, this oxidizes so freaking heavy. Like, it goes from, if this is LC1, it ends up looking like LC4 on me. So I always had to mix it with a super light foundation, and I had to add coverage because this doesn't have a ton of coverage. It's buildable to about medium, but I noticed when I built it up that far, I did start having like a cakey, clumpy kind of issue with it that I was not a fan of. So for me, I would go in with about half this and then half of something with more full coverage, an item like this perhaps, and it would just really help. But my favorite to mix it with was actually this Dior foundation, which we will dive into right now. This is the Dior Forever foundation. I actually have, I'm gonna beat to it right now. I have all 3 Diors in my top, and they're all here for different reasons. So don't get mad at me. I know what you're thinking, like, gee, Paige, do you like Dior? Yes, but I like each of them for different reasons. So when I would mix this in with my Physicians Formula, what it would do is it would not only give me coverage, but it would give me smoothing. And remember what I said from earlier, when you mix these in, you only get to keep certain properties from each one. So with the Physicians Formula, I said I got to keep that luminosity, and it was so beautiful. I got a little coverage, but it was mainly that luminosity, that brightness, that glowy skin that I was in it for. And when I would mix it with my Dior skin, I would get the most beautiful, like, melted into the skin, like I had no pores. And when it comes to Dior, all of these across the board, I will tell you that Dior is the most, to date, the most smoothing foundation I have ever worn, bar none. By itself, with other products, it is so smooth. I don't know what it is. I don't know how they do it. It is the one thing that keeps me coming back to them over and over. It is the most consistent thing in their product that I have found from time to time to time, is that it doesn't matter. These right here that I'm holding are all 3 various coverages. They're different luminosities. They're different in every single way. Even the, like, viscosity and how they feel is different, but they are all smoothing. And so when I would mix these 2 together, I would have the most smooth, the most luxurious feel in the world, because I was bright, I was smooth, I had a little coverage, and for days where I needed even more coverage, I'm telling you, I mixed 3 together, and I would add the Catrice, and this was it right here. And I would only add this if I absolutely had to, because again, when you have oily skin and acne skin, you need to limit what you put on. Well, I mean, really, it's whatever your skin type is, but the goal when working with foundation is to put on as little as possible. So if you need coverage, you need to find something that is full coverage, something that is full B, because the less product you have on your face, the less likely it is to become gummy and cakey and gooey and nasty. And with oily skin, with all the oil that comes through, you're just constantly adding product all day long. Your skin is, and it's producing this oil, and it's going to make everything shift and break apart and get kind of funky and weird and nasty, and it's not ideal. So the best way to do it is to only add it if you have to. So for me, this was so key for probably, I would say last summer. I wore this combo for like a month and a half, consistently adding in the Catrice when I had to, and I loved it all day. I would get compliments on it all the time because, again, on matte skin, it was so rare for me to get to have that luminous feel that I just really loved putting this in. And I started experimenting and like playing around with mixing this in with this foundation and that foundation. And I hate to be like the bearer of assholishness here, but I couldn't mix this in with everything. And I know that it makes me sound mean, but this foundation is not as well rounded as all the rest. Like, this is probably, I'm like looking around, this is probably the least well-rounded foundation that I have here. It is very specific. It will only mix with certain ones. A lot of these will mix in and out, and they play with each other. They play with outsiders. They like to play around. They are good people. This one is a little bit finicky in the sense of what it will and will not work with. So if you purchase it, just tread lightly. Try it with other foundations. If you only have like one foundation and, you know, it doesn't work with that one, you're screwed, because it will never work. It will only work with certain ones. It will only look good, and when it looks bad, it looks so bad. So be mindful with this one. I can tell you what I paired it with like I did, but other than that, it really is trial and error unless you like it by itself, because it is beautiful. Now, we are going to dive into the meat and potatoes, these 3 Diors. I'm going to tell you why I love them and what I love about them. So, oh, I need a Diet Coke drink. Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. I have had these 3 for a long time. I love them so much. I have probably over 100 foundations between drugstore and high-end. I know it's ridiculous, but now that now I'm glad I have them because I need to keep going back and trying something new for my face. But out of all of the bajillion foundations I have tried, these foundations right here are so consistently beautiful. So I love the regular Forever Skin. I could wear this alone. I could pair it with other things. The one thing you have to remember about Dior is that their skin tone, their range, it sucks. It is awful. Their light is so not light. The only one that they've ever actually had a decent shade range in is their Backstage collection, which is this one right here. I'll get into that more in a second. But as far as their base products like this foundation, the Coverage Foundation, their Spray Foundation, those are all very consistently so freaking dark. Their lightest shade is so dark, which I don't know if you've noticed at this point, but they're all really freaking dark. I don't know why, but their shade ranges on all of these products are not very good. But this one I could wear alone. I could wear it with other products. No matter what I did with it, it was always a winner. There were so many days that I actually wore just the Dior by itself if my acne wasn't flaring up real bad, if I wasn't super red. Because again, about medium coverage, it wasn't full coverage if you have a lot of acne and a lot of redness, but it was beautiful as far as like scarring and stuff like that. It did a beautiful job covering that. And it had such a way that it would sit on the skin. It would settle into the skin and it would just stay so beautifully. It wasn't great at like repelling oil or anything like that, but it was beautiful at when the oil got there, only getting oily in like the worst spots, which for me was always like on the sides of my nose, on my whole, like the whole nose really. A little bit right here and then a little bit on my chin. But other than that, like it would only get oily where it had to. My whole face was making oil, but it was only getting oily in the worst spots. And what I loved about this foundation was just the versatility of it, and that same type of like, I guess, mindset, that same attribute runs through for both of these as well. So these are very, very different though. For me, these are like bases, and that's exactly what I use these as. So I use this Dior Forever, which is the full coverage. This is, 3 drops can do your whole face. It's got a lot of coverage to it. Very similar to the Catrice in that respect. I would mix it in with other products when I needed a full coverage moment. I still do, but again, this is in the shade 010, and it is so freaking dark. But it's so worth it. Like, you guys, I can't even tell you how worth it this is to have on hand. When you only need a couple drops of something and you are down to this much left in the container, it tells you something. And this foundation for me is so full coverage, so beautiful, so matte, that even on my days where my oil was the absolute worst, if this was mixed in with my foundation, I found that this controlled my oil so beautifully, and it just made everything look so, like we weren't bothered by the oil. Like with this on my face was just like, it's fine, we got this. But there's oil. No, there's not. There's no oil here. What are you talking about? Because with this oil, you just felt so covered and mattified. And then when I had it mixed in with other ones, which is how I always wore these two right here were exclusively always mixed in with other foundations for two totally different reasons. But this one, if I wore it alone, it was almost too matte, but when I mixed in with other things, it was a reassuring, beautiful, like smooth foundation. It is amazing how this foundation took on the property of whatever you mixed it with. So if I mixed this one with another foundation that's coming up, which is, you'll see it here in a second, but my Clarins foundation, if I mixed it with that foundation, it took on like not just the smoothness, but like the way that it settled on the skin, and it already settled beautifully. But when you mix it with other ones, it's just so hard to describe that it does what that foundation does with a touch of mattified. Like that's all it does. It slightly mattifies. Like if it's really dewy, really luminous, you add this in and it mattifies it and gives you coverage. If you add it with something that's like super smoothing, it just smooths it down and gives you coverage. Like this is such a beautiful foundation for that. And I just, oh my God, if you have acne, if you need to cover stuff, this is so good. And again, you can wear it on its own if you can find a color that's even remotely close to your shade, which obviously I could not. Now this other one is really unique and beautiful. This is the Dior Backstage, and I have this in the shade 0N. And I was really hesitant about this because it was for face and body. I'm like, oh, the coverage is going to be crap. It's not going to wear very good. I was very pessimistic from the start. This is the only Dior I have that is near my skin tone, and it's actually a pretty beautiful skin tone, if I do say so myself, but it's very, very thin and the coverage is not the greatest. So for me, this became that mix in lighter color that I had to mix in with all of these dark foundations. I would use this, and it carried with it that really smoothing, amazing, like settle, sink into the skin, sink into the pores effect that Dior has. That is what, like for me, that is what Dior is known for. It is known for going on the face and just like settling down and making me feel so damn nice about my texture. And when I would mix this in, finally I was able to have a light Dior that would give me that. It wasn't as smoothing as like the Forever Skin. This is the smoothest, the most beautiful ever for always, but it was very close. And I love it because I was able to have something that would give me a little coverage. It was lightening my foundation, like whatever the mixture was, and it would sink into the skin in still a beautiful natural way. And it does have a natural finish, which is very different from these other two, which have a more mattified finish. This one definitely had, again, more of a natural finish. And you can see I just kind of worked that out on my hand. It does have a light sheen to it, but it is beautiful. The coverage just isn't that great. It's buildable to a lighter medium type coverage. And that's if you go in a lot with it. So for me, I never wore that alone, aside from the video where I tested it. I didn't wear it alone because it didn't have enough coverage for me, and the undertone was a little bit too yellow. So mixing this one for me was key to lighten stuff up, make it brighter, make it lighter, make it sink in, make it work. And this type of a mixture I would always, or this type of a mix-in, I would always use with something like the e.l.f. if I had to lighten the color, or with something like this next product, which I will segue right into, the Estee Lauder. This is the Double Wear Maximum Cover Camouflage Makeup. Now, I am probably the first and only person with oily skin that will tell you that the Estee Lauder Double Wear, I didn't like it. It didn't work for me. I still have it, but I preferred about 2 or 3 of the other Estee Lauder foundations over that one. It just, I don't know why. Everyone was like, oh, it's so full coverage. Wasn't full coverage on me. Oh, the shades. I hated the shades. Oh, I hated it. And for all the same reasons that everybody else loved it, I didn't like it. And so for me, this Estee Lauder Maximum Cover, this is in 1N3 Creamy Vanilla. And here's what I'm going to tell you. This is the original lightest shade. 1N3, I don't know what this was. 1N3 Creamy Vanilla was the original lightest shade. Now they did come out with, do I have it over here still? Well, that's irritating. I thought I still had it over here because they did eventually come out with more shades of this. There is a 1N1, and I'm not gonna lie, I think there's a difference in the formula between those colors and these colors, because I tried to use that one and it didn't sit the same, the coverage wasn't the same, nothing about the 1N1 or whatever it was, nothing about that one was the same when they revamped and came out with more colors. But this one is so good. And the coverage is insane. It's so beautiful. Like it's a great foundation, but the color of this, come on. And again, this is 1N3 and they did come out with lighter tones, but I didn't find ever that any of the lighter tones could compare with this one and how beautiful it is and how long it stayed on my skin. But I did always have to mix it because it was so dark. And that's where stuff like this Dior Backstage came in, because this gave me coverage. But again, what's the rule? You need something else to give you those other factors. So I loved actually, this right here was one of my favorite combinations because this gave me coverage. This gave me very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very like settled in skin. It gave me the light I needed and I didn't have any luminosity. And when I ran out of the Physicians Formula, which this right here was also a combination I loved, I started using my Marc Jacobs Dewdrops. These are in the shade Do You, and these were so beautiful to mix with literally almost any foundation here. I have mixed these in with, and they are not like a shimmery, sparkly, like weird kind of color. They're not like a weird highlight in that sense where you're like afraid of glitter. They just add like a luminosity when mixed in with foundation that is undeniable. Like I would wear these mixed in with Physicians Formula. I would wear them mixed in with this combination. I have mixed these in with literally so many foundations, and I full on vouch for these, by the way. These are so good. Again, Marc Jacobs Dewdrops in Do You. So gorgeous, and I love them. They were a little too dark for me to wear on my own, but they are stunning when you mix them in with foundation. Just saying. Okay. Anyways, now that that little PSA is over, it's like I told you before, you can only take certain elements of foundations with you, and because this was so dark, I had to mix it, and it's a good thing I had to, because this would have been overly mattifying and overly drying on my skin. Again, delivered great coverage, but the way that it set down too dry, and I needed something that would give it a little movement, a little flexibility, something that would let it sink into the skin. And that was where this really came through, and like the combination of these two with that dewdrop is just so good. Or anything with luminosity. It doesn't have to be, you know, a $50 shimmer that you mix in. It could be something as simple as adding it with another foundation, even from the drugstore, like I said, making that penny go a little farther and mixing it with something that has a healthy glow that is beautiful. The L'Oreal, what are those? The Pro Glow Drops, something like that. Something where you can easily find your color, or even a color that's lighter than your own. So when you mix a foundation with it that's darker, you're able to, you know, meet in the middle and find something that kind of closely matches your shade. So for me, these were such a game changer. This was actually one of the products that I started using when I first started my channel. Like, at the very beginning, these were one of the first things that I tried, one of the first things I tested, and I fell in love with them. And for as much as I use these and as much as I wore them, I still have like this much left in here, because like, and it goes like, it's that much. Like I only use like this much out of all the time I used it and mixed it and played with it, because you only need a little bit and the coverage is so freaking beautiful. This is so good. Now, if my count isn't off, that does bring me to my last foundation, which is the Clarins Skin Illusion Foundation. And this is actually the biggest shocker of them all, because I remember when I tried this foundation, I was like, oh, I'm not gonna like it. It was actually only a few months ago actually that I tried this, and I was like, I'm not gonna like it. It's whatever. It's and I wasn't sold on this in any way, because it says right on it like natural hydrating, broad spectrum SPF, so it's gonna have like a sunscreen in it, and it's a natural hydrating foundation. Like, hello, I had oily skin. And for me, this foundation was actually beautiful. It looked good by itself, like I could wear it alone. It didn't have the coverage I needed, because again, it gave me, you know, a beautiful like sink into the skin effect. It looked buttery and soft and natural finish, and it gave me that luminosity, but I didn't have the coverage I needed. And so I would typically go in and mix this with any of my full coverage foundations, whether that was, you know, my Catrice, my e.l.f., my Estee Lauder, whatever. My favorite to mix with this one was my Dior Forever, these two right here. I wore this combo for probably a month and a half straight, and it was so stunning, because this gave me coverage and smoothness. This gave me smoothness and luminosity, and when you put the two together, it was just like, whew, I had a veil. You couldn't see any imperfections. You couldn't see any acne scarring. You didn't even know that I had like texture on my skin, girl, because these together were like such a beautiful, fantastic, fabulous veil. And this for me just turned into one of those foundations that I can wear hair now that my skin is like changing. I've played with it a couple of times, but it is such a beautiful mix-in foundation if you need to lighten yours up. This is in the shade 100.5, and if memory serves, the Clarins, like when they released this line, it was actually a beautiful shade range. So there's a lot of options here if you need to try things out, if you need to lighten other foundations. This is a great base, and even myself as an oily skinned girl absolutely loved mixing this in. Even though it was hydrating, it had a beautiful subtle way of like balancing out all of the other mattifying factors that these other ones had. Like some of these are just so matte, like Elf, this Catrice one right here, the Dior one right here, and the Estee Lauder. Anything that had, it was like the more coverage it had, the more matte it was. And those 4 or 5 products, however many there are there, they were so freaking full coverage and so matte that I needed something to balance that out. Not because like my oils, if I waited a few hours, would come through and whatever, but I wanted something that would work with my oil and something that I could use in those hours where I don't want to look like too chalky and too matte until my oil shows up. Like that's weird. I wanted to be able to create that same beautiful, flawless, natural, slightly lit from within look that everyone else had. And for me, products like this and the mix-in foundations were so key. And that's why I had to do a video where I had 10 in it. And I know you guys probably aren't like mad about it, but I couldn't, the idea was like, let's do my top 5. And the more that I sat here, I was like, oh, but I wouldn't have picked like this foundation without this foundation, or this foundation without this one. And I wouldn't have done this. And I really wanted to create a video that was super all-encompassing as much as I possibly could for you guys, because the struggle for finding a solution to your oily skin is like so insanely difficult, and it is so, what's the word I'm looking for? Like it will drive you mad trying to figure out how to wear this. What can I pair with this? What can I do? What can I, and so many of you out there probably have very similar skin to me, which is oily and textured and this and this and this. And so a lot of these solutions really worked for me, and I hope that they work for you, or that you can at least draw something from these and you know, kind of, you know, pick through and be like, oh, well, I don't have an issue with texture, but I do need help with coverage, or I don't have an issue with this, but I would like to see some of this, and kind of, you know, go from there. Because for me, it wasn't so much about picking my 5 favorite stars. It was about picking 10 supporting actresses that all worked really beautifully together. But yeah, you guys, that is it. I really hope that this video is helpful to you guys. You have been so patient and you've requested it for such a long time. And now that I am on this side of it, my skin is starting to change. I hope to tell you some more favorites here in a few months when I've really settled into this skin and I know some favorites and I know what I like to do with it. So anyways, thank you guys all so much for watching. I really hope that you liked this video. And of course, all of these foundations will be listed down below in the description box. And if you're wondering what else is going on, I will also make sure to put what I am wearing down there as well. And you can check out that Violet Voss video. And I think that that's everything, you guys. Please don't forget to go down, comment, like, and subscribe. Leave me all of your thoughts. Let me know your favorites. And if you see someone down there like asking a question, they have oily skin, you think you can answer, you guys want to help each other out, that is great too. I really do encourage you guys to always be sweet and helpful to one another. And you guys are always so good about that. And while you're down there, you could also check me out if you're curious. I have an Instagram and a Twitter. Those are both linked down in the description box. And I definitely post over there. I post on Instagram a ton. Like, it's my world. I love posting pictures, and they're always like weird and silly, and they're just, I love it. And if you haven't subscribed, you should definitely do that as well. I do put up new videos Monday through Friday. They go up bright and early my time, between 6 and 7 a.m. I'm in northern Michigan, so we're talking early for the rest of everybody else. And I think that that's it, you guys. Thank you again so much for watching. Please do not forget to have a great day, night, weekend, whatever it is when you're watching this, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye! Ooh, shit, that's pretty. What is this? Infallible, L'Oreal Infallible 8-Hour Pro Gloss in the shade, fucking no idea. 105 Petal. Wow, that's fractastically gorgeous. Today's video is from you guys. You guys. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Paige, this is Seeking Alexandria, and today's video is 100... Slow the fuck down, Paige. Hello everybody. Do I not look centered to anybody else? Like, I feel like I am not the center of attention, and it's really causing me some problems, okay? This is the IT Cosmetics Heavenly Luxe Airbrush Powder and Bronzer Brush, number 1. And I would use it in tandem. And God, this is like the most stunning situation. Oh, I love glasses. They're so pretty.